Connecticut is a small state. You can drive across it in about 2 hours, but what most people don't realize is towns only 10 or 15 minutes apart can feel completely different. And this is where a lot of out-of-state buyers get it wrong. They choose a town based on a ranking, a list, or something they saw online. And they assume if this town is ranked number 2 and this one's number 11, then number 2 must be way better. But that's one of the biggest misconceptions about moving to Connecticut, because I've seen people move here, choose the top ranked town, and within a year realize this doesn't actually fit how we live. And if we haven't met yet, my name's David Constant, and I help people relocate to Connecticut, especially the Hartford area and the surrounding suburbs. And in this video, I'm breaking down the 5 areas in Connecticut that can catch buyers off guard, and more importantly, who they're actually a good fit for. Because none of these places are bad, they're just not right for everyone. And make sure you stick around, because one of the biggest mistakes I see buyers make has nothing to do with the town itself, and everything to do with how they approach the market here. And if you're thinking about making a move, I also put together a relocation guide that breaks down the towns, pricing, and what to expect when you live here. You can grab that in the description below. All right, let's get into it. Now, before we get into specific areas, there's something you need to understand about Connecticut as a whole, especially if you're moving here from out of state. A lot of these towns look very similar on paper. You'll see things like strong schools, nice homes, suburban feel, and it's easy to think, how different can they really be? But in reality, your day-to-day life can change a lot depending on where you land. Your commute changes, your routine changes, where you spend your time changes, even the type of community you're a part of changes. And that's the part that doesn't show up on sites like niche.com, Google, or those best places to live lists. These lists don't know you. They don't know how often you go out, how important walkability is or isn't to you, how much space you actually want, or what you want your day-to-day to look like. So what ends up happening is people choose a town because it's highly ranked, instead of asking, does it actually fit how I live? And that's where I see the disconnect happen. Because I've had conversations with buyers all the time, and it's not, we picked a bad town, it's, we picked the wrong town for us. It just doesn't feel like what we thought when we expected it. And that's a much harder problem to solve, because now you're already in it. So as we go through these next 5 areas, I want you to think about it through that lens. Not, is it a good town? But is this the right fit for me? Let's start with a category that a lot of out-of-state buyers are naturally drawn to. It's what I'd call quintessential New England towns. These are mostly in and around the Hartford area, within about 10 to 20 minutes of downtown, but each one sits in a slightly different pocket. Glastonbury is just southeast along the Connecticut River, Simsbury northwest in the Farmington Valley, and South Windsor is just northeast of the city. And places like Glastonbury, Simsbury, and South Windsor, these are towns that show up a lot on those best places to live lists, and for good reason. You're typically seeing things like an A or an A+ rating on niche for strong public schools, high household incomes, and very strong quality of life scores. For example, Glastonbury consistently ranks among the top school districts in the Connecticut, and even top 200 nationally. South Windsor gets an A+ ranking, and Simsbury schools are also highly rated, typically landing in the top tier of districts in the region. And overall, towns like these are always featured on top tier Connecticut rankings. But here's where some buyers get caught off guard. All of those rankings are true, definitely. They just don't tell you what daily life actually feels like. Because when you move here, your lifestyle shifts to something that's more routine-based, more home-centered, and a lot more driving than people expect. You're not walking to coffee every morning. You're not walking to dinner a few nights a week. You're planning your day. And a typical weekday might look something like commuting to work, home in the evening, kids' activities, gym, errands. And weekends then become sports, local events, time at home, maybe heading into West Hartford for dinner. It's a great lifestyle, no doubt. It's just a different rhythm. And I say that as someone who lives in Glastonbury myself. I love it here, but it doesn't work for everyone. The people who love these towns are the ones who are very clear on what they want. They're not chasing rankings, they're choosing a lifestyle. If your priorities are strong schools, space, safety, long-term stability, these are some of the best towns in Connecticut. But if you're expecting something like walkability, nightlife, or constant activity, that's where the disconnect starts to happen. And this is the part that matters the most. A town can be ranked number 2 and still not be in the top 10 for you. And another town is ranked number 11 and it's actually number 1 for you. So again, it's not that these towns aren't great. It's that they're not great for you. And if that's you, you're going to love it here. Now on the flip side, let's look at a town that brings a very different kind of lifestyle. West Hartford sits just west of Hartford, you guessed it, about 5 to 10 minutes from downtown, and it's really the central hub of central Connecticut. This is one of the most popular towns in the entire state, especially for people relocating from out of state. And when you look at the data, it makes a lot of sense. West Hartford consistently carries an A+ rating on Niche, and it's often ranked among the top places to live in Connecticut. And its school system is considered one of the strongest in the region. And on top of that, you've got Blueback Square, West Hartford Center, Bishop's Corner, where you can walk to restaurants, grab coffee, be around people. It feels super active, really connected. And for a lot of buyers, this is exactly what they're looking for. But here's where some buyers get caught off guard. All of that demand is exactly why it comes at a premium. So what that means in real life is higher home prices, smaller homes for the same amount of money, smaller lots, and a very limited offering of new construction, especially compared to towns like Glastonbury or Simsbury. So even at a higher price point, you're still making a trade-off. You're choosing location, walkability, and lifestyle over space and privacy. I've had a lot of buyers come here thinking, we're going to get the best of everything. And pretty quickly, they realize you're choosing what matters most. You're not getting a brand new home on a big lot with walkability all in one place. And here's the other piece. And this is really, really important. This is one of the most competitive markets in all of central Connecticut. Because when you combine A+ rated schools, lifestyle, location, demand stays incredibly high. So what it looks like is homes moving super quickly, multiple offers, limited inventory for the best properties. And the homes that are updated, well located, and priced right, well, they definitely don't sit. This is one of the towns where you need clarity and conviction. Because when the right house comes up, you have to be ready to act. And honestly, that's true for most of the top towns in Connecticut. If you're someone who values walkability, convenience, being near restaurants and activity, and a more connected lifestyle, this is one of the best towns in the state. But if your priority is space, privacy, or newer construction, this might not feel the way you expect. And that's where I've seen buyers say, we love the area, we just didn't realize what we were giving up to be here. This is a perfect example of why rankings can be misleading. It's one of the top ranked towns in the state, but that doesn't automatically make it the top ranked town for you. Now let's go in the complete opposite direction and look at an area that offers almost the reverse of this. Litchfield County in the more rural parts of Connecticut. This is the northwest corner of the state, about 45 minutes to an hour from Hartford, and in some areas even farther depending on where you are. And this is one of the areas that a lot of out-of-state buyers are really drawn to, especially coming from places like New York City, Boston, or even California, because visually, it's exactly what people expect. You've got rolling hills, historic homes, small town centers, and a lot of space and a lot of privacy. In towns like Litchfield, Washington, and Kent, they're often ranked highly for things like quality of life, safety, and overall character. You'll also see things like high home values relative to density, smaller populations, and a more rural, low-density feel overall. But here's where some buyers get caught off guard. It's a very different day-to-day lifestyle. You're farther away from things like major job centers, shopping, restaurants, and everyday conveniences. So what that means is everything takes a little bit more planning. A normal day here might look something like longer drives for errands, fewer quick last-minute options, quieter evenings, and more time spent at home or outside. And depending on where you are, even something like groceries might be a 15 or 20-minute drive. So the trade-off quickly becomes you're gaining things like privacy, space, and a really beautiful environment. But you're giving up something like convenience, proximity, and some level of activity. Now, for the right buyer, this is exactly what they want. If you're working remotely, looking for peace and quiet, or more of a retreat-style lifestyle, this can be an incredible place to live. But if you're someone who values things like convenience, wants to be near things, or is used to a faster pace of life, this can feel isolating over time. And that's something people don't always realize up front. I've seen a lot of folks fall in love with the idea of this lifestyle and then realize that living it day to day is very different. So again, It's not that this isn't a great place to live, because it is for the right person. It's that it's a very specific lifestyle. And if that lifestyle fits you, you're going to absolutely love it. But if it doesn't, you're going to feel it very quickly. So now let's look at another area that can feel like a great value on paper, but comes with a different kind of trade-off. Towns with older housing stock. These are typically right around the Hartford area, very centrally located in towns like Newington, Wethersfield, and parts of East Hartford. So from a location standpoint, they're actually really convenient. You're often only about 10 to 15 minutes to Hartford, close to major highways like I-84, I-91, near shopping, restaurants, and everyday essentials. And when you first look at these areas, they can feel like great value. You'll often see things like lower median home prices, more affordability, especially when you compare it to towns like West Hartford or Glastonbury. And they have solid overall town infrastructure. For example, you might find homes in the $300,000 to $400,000 range in towns where nearby markets are pushing $500,000 to $600,000 range of the same size. So on paper, it looks like a great opportunity. But here's what a lot of buyers don't fully account for: the age and the condition of the house. Most of these homes were built between the 1930s and 1970s. So what that often means is you've got older layouts, smaller rooms, low ceilings in some cases, and mechanical systems that may be nearing the end of their life. And this is where the numbers start to shift, because what looks like a $350,000 house can quickly turn into a $400,000 or $500,000 investment once you factor in things like a roof replacement, HVAC updates, electrical or plumbing upgrades, a new kitchen or bathroom. And depending on the home, those costs can add up quickly. I've had a lot of buyers walk into these homes thinking, this is a great deal. And then after the inspections or a contractor walks through it, they realize something very different. There's a lot more work here than they expected. Now, that doesn't mean that these are bad options. In fact, they can be a great option for the right buyer. If you're someone who is okay with doing some work over time, doesn't need everything to be brand new, or even prefers a home with a little bit of character, this can actually be a really smart move. And it's especially true for buyers who still care about things like being in a strong community, having access to solid schools, and being in a central, convenient location. Because towns like Newington and Wethersfield, they do offer all of those things. You've got established neighborhoods, a real community feel, and in many cases, strong local amenities in town identity. So for buyers who are thinking, I don't need everything to be perfect day one, but I want a good location and a solid foundation long term, this can be a great fit. You just have to go into it understanding that you're trading upfront condition for long-term value. But if you're expecting fully updated, move-in ready, and minimal maintenance, this is where expectations and reality can start to split. And that's where I've seen buyers say things like, we thought we were getting a deal, but we didn't factor everything in. So again, you've heard me say it before, it's not that these towns aren't good options, it's that you need to understand what you're really buying, because the price you see isn't always the full picture. And then there's one more category that a lot of people dream about when they think about Connecticut: the Connecticut Shoreline. This runs along the southern edge of the state, right along the Long Island Sound, and depending on where you are, you're typically about 45 minutes to an hour from Hartford, and anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours from New York City. I'm talking about towns like Westbrook, Old Saybrook, Madison, Guilford. These are some of the most well-known shoreline communities. And this is what a lot of out-of-state buyers picture when they think about Connecticut. You've got beaches, water views, charming town centers, restaurants along the water. And towns like Madison, Guilford in particular, are often ranked highly on statewide lists for things like quality of life, safety, and overall desirability. Homes here also tend to reflect that, especially closer you get to the water. But here's what people don't always realize. This lifestyle, it tends to be a little bit seasonal. Summers here are beautiful. The towns are busy, vibrant, full of activity. But once you get into late fall, winter, early spring, things slow down a lot. And that's where the experience changes. In the winter months, you'll notice things like fewer people out, fewer events, some businesses with reduced hours, and a much quieter overall feel. So your day-to-day lifestyle becomes more relaxed, more low-key, and a bit more isolated depending on where you are. So the trade-off here is you're getting things like lifestyle, scenery, and a really unique environment, but you're also giving up things like year-round energy, proximity to major job centers, and in some cases, convenience. Now, for the right buyer, This can be an incredible place to live, and tons of people love it there. If you're working remotely, buying a second home, or intentionally looking for a slower pace, this is exactly the kind of lifestyle people are all after. But if you're expecting consistent activity year-round, easy commuting, or a more connected central location, this can feel very different than what you imagined. And I've seen buyers fall in love with the Shoreline in the summer, only to realize what it actually feels like in January. So again, it's not that the Shoreline isn't a great place to live. It's that it's a very specific lifestyle. And if that's what you're looking for, it can be amazing. But if it's not, that's where the disconnect starts to happen. So when you step back and look at all of this, this is really what it comes down to. Don't choose based on rankings. Don't choose based on headlines. Choose based on how you live, what your day-to-day looks like, and what actually matters to you most. Because the difference between a great move and a move you regret usually comes down to fit. You can have a top-ranked town, a great house, strong public schools, and still feel like something's off if it doesn't match your lifestyle. And on the flip side, you can choose a town that might not be ranked #1, but fits you perfectly, and have a completely different experience. So if you're thinking about making a move, here's what I'd focus on. Not just where's the best place to live, but where will I spend most of my time? What does my daily routine actually look like? How important is walkability versus space? How much driving am I okay with? And what kind of environment do I want to be in day to day? Because once you get clear on that, the right town usually becomes a lot more obvious. And this is something I spend a lot of time walking through with my clients. Because once you get this part right, everything else becomes a lot easier. If you're thinking about making a move to Connecticut, I put together a relocation guide that breaks down things like the different towns, price points, lifestyle differences, and what to expect here. So if you want that, check the link below and I'll send it over. And if you want help figuring out where you actually fit in Connecticut, whether that's one of these towns or somewhere completely different, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help you map it out and make a smart decision from the start. And if this video was helpful, even a little, make sure you subscribe, tap the bell for notifications so you don't miss future videos. And I'll see you on the next one.